Hi there and welcome to my channel Full Stack Explorers. As you may know, I've announced a new series on Fresh.js using mongodb as a backend, so let's get started. As you can see, I've already opened the Fresh.js website and their UI is quite impressive. Let's go to their documentation of Fresh.js and create a new project. Here you can see the introduction. You can read it by yourself. Copy the first command and open your VS Code editor. I've opened mine and opened the terminal, paste the command there and press enter. Now it asks us for the project name. I'll name my project Web App. Next thing it will ask for, do you want to use Tailwind or Tailwind? I'll definitely go with Tailwind CSS, and I'll recommend you guys to do the same. Next question will be, do you use VS Code? Press Y for yes. And the project is created now. Easy, right? To start the project, let's go to the project directory first, which is Web App, and enter the command Deno task start to run the project. It will add some dependencies and start the project soon. The good thing is, when I started working with Fresh, it did not support NPM modules, and now it does, so a lot of things have become easier, as NPM has good libraries, as you already know if you've worked with nodejs. As you can see, the project has started on port 8000. Copy the link and paste it into your browser. There you can see a beautiful default UI with a counter in it. You can do increment and decrement. Let's make a change to this page first. Go to the VS Code again where you open the project. We'll discuss the folder structure in the next video. To change the content on the main page, go to the routes/index.ts file, and there you can change Welcome to Fresh to Welcome to Full Stack Explorers. Let's see the changes, and as you can see, it's changed to Full Stack Explorers. Great, you have started with Fresh.js now. There is one more thing before ending this video I want to let you know about, which is how to get rid of these red lines in your VS Code. You need to download the VS Code extension for Deno and install the extension. Now, it will use the Deno environment. If it doesn't work in your case, try restarting the project. It should work. Let's talk about folder structure of Fresh.js. As you can see in the VS Code, firstly we have .github folder. The .github folder included in a Fresh.js project by default. This folder is typically used for version control and automation purposes on GitHub, but Fresh itself doesn't require it for functionality, and in .github folder we have workflows folder. You can define automated workflows using YAML files within this subfolder. These workflows can be triggered by events like pushing code to a branch, creating a pull request, or releasing a new version. Fresh doesn't have specific workflows built in, but you could create custom ones for tasks like running tests or deploying your application. Second, we have .vscode folder. The .vscode folder in a Fresh.js project is also not mandatory. It's specifically for Visual Studio Code and provides configuration files to enhance your development experience within that editor. Now let's talk about main folders. First, we have Components folder. The component folder is a fundamental concept for organizing your application's code, mostly used to handle reusable components and files. Then we have an Islands folder. In Fresh.js, islands are like separate rooms where you can do different tasks without disturbing the main room. They're used for running tasks in the background, like checking for new messages or processing data, so that the main part of the app can keep running smoothly without waiting for these tasks to finish. Islands can also talk to each other and to the main part of the app, making it easier to manage different parts of the program. Now we have node_module folder, which was recently added in Fresh.js. The node_modules folder is that contains all the third-party libraries and modules installed via npm node package manager. These modules are essential for the project's functionality and are managed by npm to ensure version compatibility and easy dependency management. Next, we have routes folder. In Fresh.js, The routes folder contains files that define the application's routes and their corresponding handlers. Each file typically represents a different set of routes or a specific feature of the application. These route files help organize the code and separate the routing logic from other parts of the application, making it easier to manage and maintain. In Fresh.Js, the API folder within the routes directory is used to define API routes specifically. These routes handle requests from clients and typically deal with data manipulation or retrieval. Organizing API routes in a separate folder helps maintain a clear separation between API-related logic and other parts of the application, such as web routes or middleware. This structure improves code organization and readability, making it easier to manage complex API endpoints. Next, we have static folder in Fresh.Js. The static folder is used to store static assets such as images, style sheets, and client-side JavaScript files. These assets are served directly to clients without any processing by the server. Placing static assets in the static folder keeps them separate from dynamic content and allows the server to efficiently serve them to clients upon request. This folder is essential for building web applications that require static resources for styling, scripting, and other client-side functionality. Now, there are a couple important files I want to tell you guys. First one is dev.ts file. In Fresh.Js, the dev.ts file is used to configure the development environment settings for your application. This file typically contains settings related to the development server, such as the port number to listen on, the host address, and any middleware configurations. It allows developers to set up their development environment according to their needs, making it easier to test and debug their application locally before deploying it to a production environment. The dev.ts file plays a crucial role in managing the development workflow and ensuring that the application runs smoothly during development. Next one, we have fresh.config.ts file in Fresh.Js. The fresh.config.ts file is used to define the configuration settings for your Fresh.Js application. This file allows you to customize various aspects of your application, such as the server settings, middleware configurations, and routing options. You can use the fresh.config.ts file to set up routes, define middleware, configure the server settings, and manage other aspects of your application's behavior. This file is essential for customizing your Fresh.Js application to meet your specific requirements and can help you create a more efficient and effective development environment. Next, we have main.ts file. The main.ts file in Fresh.Js serves as the entry point for your application. It is where you configure routes, middleware, and other settings. You can define global configurations, set up middleware functions, define routes, and start the server. It's essentially the heart of your Fresh.Js application, where you define how it handles incoming requests and processes them. Today, we will talk about how routes work in Fresh.Js and also how we can create routes. First, let's start the project. Open the terminal in your VS Code by clicking Terminal above. Then click on New Terminal or. You can use the shortcut Ctrl plus Shift plus tilde sign on your left corner of your keyboard. Now type Deno task start and press Enter. The server is started on port 8000. Click on the link by pressing Ctrl plus click or copy the link and paste it in your browser. As you can see, it's running now. Let's clean up this default code first. Get back to VS Code. Go to the routes folder and open the index.tsx file, which is the main entry point of the app. The index.tsx file represents the /route, which will be the localhost 8000/page. Alright, let's remove the code inside the home function. Add a return statement and a div in it. Write something here. I'll write hello full stack explorers. Save the file. Before checking the changes, let's go to the islands folder, which contains the counter.tsx file. This file is used in the index.tsx file. Remove the counter.tsx file as we don't need the counter anymore. Check the changes in the browser. As you can see, the page content is removed and only Hello Full Stack Explorer's text is displayed. Let's get back to VS Code. There are two things you need to know before proceeding further. 1. The code in the routes folder pertains to server-side content, while the code in the islands folder is for client-side content. What does that mean? In server-side content, you can't write client-side code, which is located in the routes folder. Similarly, in client-side content, you can't write server-side code, so you might be wondering how it works. I explained this in my last video and will delve deeper into it in later videos. Just remember you can't mix front-end code in the backend and vice versa. Many people make this mistake because they don't realize that Fresh.Js supports SSR server-side rendering. Now, let's get back to the main topic. We can create routes in Fresh.Js in two ways. 1. File-based routing. 2. Folder-based routing. What is file-based routing? File-based routing in Fresh.Js involves creating individual files for each route in the routes folder. Each file represents a specific route of the application. To create a new route using file-based routing, right-click on the routes folder and select New File. I'll name the route products.tsx and press Enter. Inside the file, create a default exported function that represents the route's content. Save the file and check the changes in the browser. Now how you can access any route. Go to URL and enter route name after / as our route name is products and press Enter. As you can see, it's working now. Now let's get back to VS Code. Remember, every route you create should be exported as a default function. Failure to do so may cause issues with your application. How the folder-based routing works? Folder-based routing in Fresh.Js involves creating folders within the routes folder, where each folder represents a specific route of the application. Inside each route folder, there should be an index.tsx file that represents the content of that route. To create a new route using folder-based routing, right-click on the routes folder and select New Folder. Name the new folder with the desired route name. I'll name this route blog and press Enter. Inside the blog folder, right-click and add a new file named index.tsx. Create a default exported function inside index.tsx that represents the route's content. In return, I'll make a div like I did in products route file and I'll add text. This is blog page. Save the file. Now, when you navigate to the blog route in your application, it will display the content defined in the index.tsx file inside the blog folder. Check the changes in the browser. To view the newly created route, follow the same process as before. Navigate to the main entry URL, add blog after the / and press Enter. You should now see the content of the blog page displayed. Well done, everyone. You've now learned how to create routes in Fresh.Js using both file-based and folder-based routing methods. As for why I prefer the folder-based approach, I'll explain more in the next video as we delve into advanced topics. In the meantime, keep practicing and don't hesitate to reach out if you encounter any issues. In this video, we will talk about dynamic routing and how it's work in Fresh.Js. Let me explain what is dynamic routing first. The dynamic routing in web development allows you to create routes that change based on the requested URL, enabling dynamic content delivery like user profiles or blog posts. In Fresh.Js, you can create dynamic routes using placeholders in your route paths. For example, a route for user profiles might look like profile userid, where userid is a placeholder for the actual user ID. When a request is made to this route, Fresh.Js extracts the user ID from the URL and allows you to use it in your code to fetch and display the corresponding user profile. Let's go for practical and check how it's work. I'll create a route profile, right-click on Routes folder and create New Folder. Name that folder profile and press Enter. Now create index.tsx file by right-clicking on Profile folder. Create a default method in index.tsx file. In return statement, I'll render a div, which show text, profile page, save the changes. And check the changes in the browser as the server is running already to port 8000. Go to profile page by entering an URL after /profile and press enter. Great, we have a profile page now. Now let's get back to the VS Code. In profile folder, create another file which start with square bracket, and in square bracket we add user ID as route name and we close the square bracket. In Fresh.Js, the route, which enclosed in square brackets, are dynamic routes. As route is created now, we can create a function here, name as dynamic route. In return statement, we will add a div same as usual, and I will write the user ID is, after that, open curly bracket and close curly bracket. In curly brackets, I will add IT here. Don't worry about the red line for now. Now in this method, we have default param as props. Now you will be wondering, what are props here? In Fresh.Js, props within routes serve as a mechanism to pass data from a route to its corresponding components, including islands. These props allow you to create dynamic and reusable components that can adapt their behavior based on the provided data. Now I'll make a variable name ID, in which will be equal to props.params.userid. Now you will be thinking what I wrote here. Let me explain. In Fresh.Js, props.params.userid refers to the value of the user ID, parameter passed in the route URL. When you define a route with a dynamic segment like /user/:user ID, the value of user ID can be accessed in the component rendered for that route using props.params.userid. Now save the file and check in the browser. If you go to /profile/1, here you can see the user ID is 1. If you change the user ID in URL, it will show change ID here. This is how you can make dynamic routes in Fresh.Js. For your learning, check out the greet route and check how it's working here. Dynamic routing is a powerful feature that enhances the flexibility and interactivity of your web applications, making it easier to create personalized and dynamic user experiences. Today we will talk about handler and how it's work. Alright, let's delve into it and let me explain what handlers are. In Fresh.Js, handlers are functions that define how your application responds to different events or requests. They are commonly used in routes to handle HTTP requests. For example, you can have a handler for a GET request to fetch data from a server or a POST request to submit form data. Handlers are essential for building web applications as they determine the behavior of your application when certain actions are performed. In other words, handlers are the workhorses behind processing incoming requests and generating responses for your web application. They act like instructions that tell Fresh what to do when a user visits a specific URL or performs an action. Imagine a restaurant where a waiter takes your order the request and delivers the food the response. In Fresh, handlers are similar to the waiters. They receive the request the user's desired URL, figure out what needs to be done, render a page, fetch data, and then deliver the response, the final web page the user sees. Let's check practically how handlers work in Fresh.Js. Here I'm in the same project which we are following from the beginning of our journey. Let's go to the routes folder. In routes folder, go to blog folder and open up the index.tsx file of blog route. Let's make a handler here. The syntax of handler is like this. Let me explain the code. I have made a variable category data which contain array of objects. Each object contain category name, category status, and timestamp. Consider it that data coming from database. Let write a handler which render this data to my current route. Let me explain the code what's happening here. This line exports an object named handler as part of the module. It is of type handlers, which likely defines how to handle different HTTP requests. The object contains a method get which is an asynchronous function used to handle GET requests. This is the handler for GET requests. It takes two arguments _rec request and ctx context. Inside the function, it tries to fetch the categories from category data array and then renders a response using ctx.renderCategories. This line returns a response with the categories array to be rendered. The await keyword is used because ctx.render is likely an asynchronous operation. Now how we can get that data in our route. We are unable to access handler in our blog function. Now, as we talked about props in last video, here they used to get the data which renders from handler. Add props in param, which have type page props provided by Fresh.Js. Now, if we want to access the data, you need to use props.data. Let's see on console what it shows. As you can see, it's showing the handler's data here. We can utilize that data and show to our client side easily, which we will talk about in later videos. One thing I want to tell you guys, which is, if we are using handlers in our routes files, we will use ctx.render to pass the data in our component. But in API folder, we will send a response to client side to get the data. We will talk about APIs folder in the next coming videos. Now let's summarize what handlers do. When a user visits a URL, Fresh matches it against defined routes. The corresponding route handler is then responsible for fetching any necessary data from a database, for rendering the appropriate HTML template the structure of the page, filling the template with data making the page dynamic. Handlers can also perform other tasks like redirecting users to other pages, handling form submissions, responding to API requests. If your application has an API, Fresh provides a simple syntax for defining handlers, making it easy for beginners to get started. In a nutshell, handlers are the essential building blocks that determine how Fresh responds to user interactions and requests, ultimately shaping the user experience of your web application. As we talked about handlers in our last video, today we will talk about API handlers and how it's work in Fresh.Js framework. API handlers is used to create APIs in Fresh.Js framework. You can do CRUD operation with it in your database. Let's delve into it quickly without wasting any more time. Go to APIs folder. Let's delete this joke API first, as we don't need it anymore. Create a new file in APIs folder by right-click on it. Click on New File. I'll name this file categories.ts. In APIs folder, we will make .ts files instead of .tsx. Let's make a handler here. The syntax is same we make one in our last video. Handler have a type handlers, which provided by Fresh.Js. I'll make a GET request here to get categories. Create a try catch here to catch error if our API issues. Let's go to our blog route and get the categories data which we made before in our last video. Don't worry about database, we will use MongoDB next videos, and I'll tell you guys briefly how to connect and use MongoDB. Now paste the custom categories data above the handler in our categories API file. In try, I'll make a variable named categories and store our custom categories in it for now. Now return a response here which send data in JSON stringify form to client side. We can add status here. We will use status code utility provided by Deno, and status code will be OK, which means 200 by the way. The status text will be data received. I forgot to export the handler, also it's handler, not handlers. Always remember, wherever you make handler, whether in routes file or APIs file, always export the handler, otherwise it will not work and you will get issues. Now save the file. Now go to islands folder. I'll make a file, blog island. I'm going to use client-side functionality. As I have already explained in my past videos, you can write client-side code, also known as front-end code, in server-side files and vice versa. In island, you can write client-side code, so I'll do the API integration here. Now make a default function here. I'm using an extension which provide custom default function. Although it's used for React, but as Fresh.Js use p-React, it's quite handy here. Remove the import statement here, as we are not using React here. Copy the island name. Now go to our blog route, click on index.tsx file, remove the content in the div and call the blog island function here. Save the file, run the server by typing Deno task start in the terminal. Now as the server is running, check the changes in the browser. As it's a blog route, I'll go to /blog route. Now let's get back to VS Code. I'll make a function here to fetch the data. This will be an async function as we will get the data from API here. Now I'll use try-catch here too. It's a good practice to use try-catch though. In catch, throw the error so we can get in the browser if the try block got any issues. Now in try block, I'll make a response variable which will be await. We can use Axios here. As it's not giving the suggestion in Deno, let's switch to fetch and use fetch to get the data from API for now. In fetch, the route will be the same as the folder structure, go in API folder. It will be /API. As an API folder, we have categories file, so it will be /API/categories and the file name which we made to use API code, where our handler exists. After that in .then, there we will get a response from API. The response will be in JSON from. Let's add a console here to check the response in our browser. Let's call the function in useEffect. Now you will be wondering what is useEffect here. Let me explain. useEffect is a hook in React, or p-React, that enables you to perform side effects in function components. Side effects are actions that happen outside the main flow of your application, such as data fetching, setting up subscriptions, or manipulating the DOM. When you call useEffect, you provide it with a function that contains the code for your side effect, as we call our fetchData function here. It will execute this function after rendering the component for the first time and after every update. If you want to run the effect only once after the initial render, you can pass an empty dependency array as the second argument to useEffect. Save the changes and let's check our console in our web browser as our server is running fine with no errors. Now right-click on your browser and press Inspect, or press Ctrl+Shift+I to open the Inspect window. Check console. Now as you can see, we are getting the categories data in our browser. That's it for now. I hope you understand how to use handlers as API in Fresh.Js framework. Today we will talk about how to install MongoDB in our operating system, as we are going to utilize MongoDB in our next videos soon. Open Google and type Install MongoDB. Click on Install MongoDB Community Edition link. Now scroll down a bit, click on MongoDB Download Center. Here you need to download Community Edition GUI, which we will use in our coming projects. Select your operating system. As I'm using Windows, I'll click on Windows. Now the package type, I'll select MSI. Click on Download. As I already downloaded, I'll cancel the download. You just need to download and click on File. Once it's downloading, click Next and Next until package is download. Now after installing the Community Edition, we will download the mongosh file from MongoDB site. Type mongosh in MongoDB search. Click on first link. Click on Install mongosh. Here you can download the MongoDB shell file. We'll follow the same procedure from here and click on Download. Now go back to the first site we have open. Scroll down to the mid. Here you need to run few commands in your terminal. Hopefully it will work in your system. Check if it's download or not. Type mongosh in your terminal and press Enter. If you see this window, this will proof that MongoDB is downloaded in your system now. I'll share both links below so you can go and directly download files in your system. Today we will talk about how to install MongoDB in Ubuntu. Type Install MongoDB in Ubuntu in your Google search. Click on first link. Scroll down a bit. Here are steps you need to follow. Open Terminal and copy the import public key command. Now select Ubuntu type. I'm using Jammy here. Copy the below command and run it in your terminal. Now enter the install command. Follow step by step like I did. Now to start MongoDB, copy that command and press Enter. To check it's installed or not, type mongosh and press Enter. As you see, it's working perfectly. I'll share the links below so you can go and directly install in your system. If you guys got any issues during installation, feel free to comment the issue. I will definitely look into it. First of all, I'll say thank you guys for reaching this far of the course. I hope you understands the basics of Fresh.Js framework now. Now start from today, we will create small full-stack projects, so you guys have much better understanding of this framework. In this project, we create a to-do app. This app will do the CRUD operation, which means we can add to-dos which will store in DB, also get to-dos from DB and so on. Let's create a new project by copying this command. Let's paste in the terminal and get started. I'll name the project to-do app. I'll go with Tailwind CSS as usual. Let's go to the project directory and open VS Code here by typing code space dot. Alright, we are in VS Code now. Let's open a terminal here and type Deno task start to run the project. It's started now on port 8000. Now open it in your browser. As you can see, it's running perfectly. Now let's remove this default UI first. Let's get back to VS Code and remove those files as we did in our previous video. First, I'll remove content in index.ts file, add to-do app in the div. Now I'll remove other unnecessary files. Everything is done and we don't have any errors in terminal. Let's check the changes in the browser. As you can see, the default UI is gone, perfect. Now get back to VS Code, remove the to-do app. Let's create a UI for to-do here. I'll use Tailwind to make the UI. I'm using Tailwind classes here. If you want to know how it's work, go to the Tailwind official site, you can read their documentation. Let's see the current changes of UI in the browser. Looks like we have an issue of width here. Let's fix the issue. Get back to VS Code. Change the main container width here. Fix the image location. Let's check the changes again. Looks perfect now. Alright, now let's add to-do UI below. Let's create a new file and island as we are going add functionality in client side. So as you know, the client side code work in only island folder and in routes the server side code works. I'll name the file to-dos as we will display all to-do here with buttons. I'll make the UI faster here so we can go for the logic as quickly as possible. Copy the function name from here, get back to the index.tsx file. Import that to-dos file here below the image div. Save the file and check the changes in the browser. Perfect. We have an input field to enter to-do name and a button to add in the database. Now let's create a UI where we display our to-dos. Get back to VS Code again. Let's make a fragment here first and wrap the content in the fragment. Now make a p tag here to display added to-do. I'll add static text for now. Let's make two button 2. One will edit the current to-do and other will delete the to-do. Let's check the changes in the browser. What's done so far? Great, we have the UI for to-do app now. We will add the functionality in the next video. As we made a simple UI in our last video, now we will go for the functionality in our to-do app. Let's get started without wasting any more time. Let's make state above, which will handle our data. Let me explain what is useState and what this part of the code doing here. useState is a p-react hook used for managing state in functional components. It allows you to declare a state variable and provides a way to update its value. When you call useState, it returns an array with the current state value and a function to update that value. As I have made a state to-do which will have initial value empty string and set to-do, which will update that to-do value or set new value in it. Let's add an onChange listener in our input field, which will listen and set the value which user write in an input field, and we will set that value in our set to-do state. Now the value will be to-do, which will be our initial state value as I have told you guys before, which will currently empty string. Now let's add a onClick listener, which will be used to call an action or perform an action. I'll name the method add to do. Let's make that method above our return statement. This method will be an asynchronous method. Let's add a try-catch block here. In try block, I'll add a response and made a Axiot API, which we will going to create shortly, and then return the response. Let's make a API now. Right-click on API folder, click on New Folder. I'll name the folder as to-do as our path is /API/to-dos. Let's make an index.ts file here which will contain our API handler here. Let's make a handler here as we make the last time. The syntax is same. It will be a post API handler. I'll add try catch here. In try, I'll add a return statement which will contain the response null, as we don't need to send anything to client side, and the status code will be 201, which means created. I'll get the to-do which we are sending from client side from request.json method. Always remember if you are sending anything from client side, the data will be get from this way in server side. Now let's add a console here and check if our API is working or not. Save the changes. Check the changes in the browser now. I'll write walking in our input field and press add button. Nothing happened here. Let's get back to our VS Code. Check the console. As you can see, we are getting the data, which we send from client side and get from server side. Today's video we will talk about how to connect MongoDB with Fresh.Js project. As we are making a to-do app and already in the same project, let's get started. Let's create a folder in our main directory. I'll name the folder utils. We will use that folder to utilize our helper files and methods which we will add here. Right-click on that folder, create a new file name dbconnection.ts. Before writing anything here, let's create two more files. One will be here with name config.ts. The other file will be in main directory, which will be .env file. In .env file, we will write a MongoDB connection string here, which you can get from MongoDB Compass. Open MongoDB Compass, connect the DB. Click on three dots which are on right side of localhost. Now click on Copy Connection String. Now let's get back to VS Code and paste or write that connection string there. Save that file. Go to config.ts file now. There is a config utility which provided by Deno. This config method is used to get the .env file data. If you are familiar with node.js, there we use process.env to get the .env file data. I'll get the MongoDB URI from there and export that below. Now let's get back to our DB connection file. The Deno have a utility which provide type of DB which is database and Mongo client which used to create connection. I'll share all the links below, don't worry, so you can read their documentation too. I'll import MongoDB URI here. I'll initialize a variable named DB and pass the type database to it. I'll create an asynchronous function below which will be create MongoDB connection. Add a try catch here. If we got any errors, this will help us. I'll create a variable name client which creates a new instance of the Mongo client class, which is used to interact with the MongoDB database. The client instance to the MongoDB server specified in the MongoDB_URI variable. The await keyword is used to wait for the connection to be established before proceeding. The console indicating that the MongoDB connection has been successfully established, which we will see if we don't get any issue there in our console. This next line returns a reference to the to-dos database from the connected client instance. This database can then be used to perform operations such as inserting, updating, and deleting documents in the to-dos database. Outside the function, I'll do two exports. First, I'll equal my method to DB variable which I initialize above. Second thing, we'll export the create MongoDB connection function too, which we will use to connect our DB in our main entry point of app, which we will talk about in our next video. As in the last video, we know how to configure MongoDB with Fresh.Js project. Also, we have the post API and get the data from client side to server side in our second last video. Today, we will store the data in our MongoDB database. Let's get started now. I'll make a variable named to-dos collection and get the DB instance which we export in DB connection file as know which we did in our last video. The DB instance provides some methods. We will use .collection here to make a collection. This method will create a collection name todos first for us, then we can do insertion in it. Let's rename our database name as it's the same name as our collection name. Go to db connection file. Change the name from todos to todos-app. Save the changes and get back to index.ts file again. Let's remove the console log from below. I'll await here and use my todos collection variable, which contain all the methods like find, insert, delete, and update provided by MongoDB. I'll use insert1 here. The insert1 method is used to create one object in the database, like we need to store one to-do here. If we have more than one to-dos, insert many here. By name, you can understand it stores more than one values in the DB. I have make a object here because we store data in object or array of object form in database. Like you can see, I have wrapped the to-do with same key to do, and value will be our dynamic value with same the changes and check the console. Looks like we have an error here. It's a MongoDB error. Connection failed. No connection could be made because the target machine actively refused it. OS error 10. I know where this error coming from. Go to .env file. Here you can see the connection string which we get from MongoDB Compass. In Windows, usually you need to change the local host to 127.0.0.1, which is the localhost IP address. In Ubuntu or Linux, we don't get that problem. Only in Windows we got that problem. Save the changes and check the console again. As you can see, the error is gone and we are getting the console message that the DB connection is established, which we added in the DB connection file. I forgot to tell you guys how we are getting this message. You need to call the create MongoDB connection file in your main.ts file, which is the main entry of the Fresh.Js project. Whenever we start the project, the main.ts and dev.ts file first execute and check everything. If you want to know more about this, check my first video where I have explained everything. Let's check our changes in our browser by adding a to-do. The project is running fine. Let's add a to-do here. I'll add walking here and press on add button. Nothing happened here. Let's check if that to-do is added in our DB or not. Go to MongoDB Compass, which is the graphical user interface GUI. I have not seen my DB name here. Let's refresh the DB by clicking on refresh icon here. As you can see, we have our DB here, named todos app. Click on it. Here we have todos collection, which we made in our handler file. Click on that now. Great. As you can see, we have our first to-do object, which we added from client side, and it's saved in the DB now. Congratulations, you have performed a create operation now. In the next video, we will know how to get the data from our database and send it to client side. As you know, in our last video, we know how to perform a create operation and save data in our DB. Today, we will talk about how we can get the data from our MongoDB database. Let's get started. As we are in the same project, clicked on todos.tsx file. Let's create a fetch todos function here, which will get our todos from API. This function will be asynchronous function as it takes time to run. Add try catch here and throw error in catch block. In try block, add a response variable here, this variable which get the response from our API. Our API will be same as before. We just changed the axia.post to axia.get to get our data. Let's add a console below and check what we are getting in response. After that, make a use effect here. As you know, I already explained what use effect do. It will render or call out fetch to do method whenever the component render or update. Add a function in use effect. Save the changes. Before checking the changes in browser, let's create an API first. Go to API folder, and in API folder, we have todos folder. Click on index.ts file where we make our post API. Below our post API object, we can create another object. This will be asynchronous as our post API, but this time it will be get request as we are going to get the data from database. This method will also have request and context params. Add and try and catch block here, and catch return response with an error. Now in try block, I'll add variable name todos. This variable will be await, and I'll use our todos collection here to use find method. What find method do? The find method will get all the data from the todos collection, and the .toArray method will convert our data to array of object form. Below that we will return a new response method. This method will get our todos in JSON.stringify form. After that, we will add object which contain the status. The status of this response will be 200, okay? You can add status text anything here. Save the changes now and check it in your browser. Now open Inspect by right-click on your browser screen and check Console here. As you can see, we are getting a response here. In response, go to Data. Here you are getting all the data from API from DB. As we only have one to do in DB, it's only showing one here. Now let's get back to our VS Code again. Let's show the data in our UI. Click on todos.tsx file. Remove the console from here. Let's make a state above by using useState to store our todos in it. I'll name the state as getTodos and set the getTodos. I'll make an interface above which will have todos, have type string, add an interface after useState. Copy the set getTodos and paste it below response. We will set the response data here as the data in response.data object. Now copy the getTodos. Scroll below in our JSX. Below the parent div, add a curly bracket here. Paste the getTodos here, and as the data is in array of object form, which means we will have more than one object, we will map the data here. In map method, we have a todo which will have type any for now. In this anonymous method, we will add a return statement here. In return statement, add a fragment here. We'll copy the below div and paste it in the fragment you just made. I'm using Shift+, Alt+, F to set the indentation in Windows. Now we're getting the getTodos redline error due to it can be undefined or null if we don't get the data in the response. To fix this, before getTodos map, add todos and an operator here. What this will do is, it will check if we getting todos data it run the next map to do, else it will not run that part along with JSX. We consider it like true or false condition for now. Now display the todo name in the JSXP tag. Remove todo here and add curly bracket here. In our curly bracket, add todo dot. Todo as in DB, our key name is also todo. Now add a key in the div. Every todo will have a unique key we will use todo dot underscore ID, where this is MongoDB created ID. Now save the changes and check the changes in the browser. As you can see, we have our todo now. You can see we only have one todo, which is walking. You can add more todo from above and refresh the page to check the changes for now. I'll show you a proper way in next videos. Meanwhile, you can explore by yourself for now. As you know, in our last video, we know how to do add operation and get operation in Fresh.Js framework using MongoDB. Today we will talk about how to do edit operation in our project, so let's get started now. Before moving to edit operation, there is one thing we need to improve, which is when we add our todos, we need to refresh the page, which is not a good practice. It need to show that todo below when we click on Add button. Let's get back to our project and change few things. Go to Add Todo method. Above return response, I'll add a condition here. If the response.status is equal to 201, which we add in our API, here you see 201 in our response. We will call the fetch_todos method here with await keyword, as the fetch_todos method is also an asynchronous method. We make the input field of add todo empty when that todo will be added, by adding setTodoState as an empty string. Let's check the changes in our browser now. Let's add todo here. As you can see, I don't need to refresh the page. When I clicked on Add button, it automatically shows that todo below. Let's get back to our VS Code again and worked on edit todos functionality now. I'll make a method edit todo below our fetch_todos method. This method will be asynchronous method. Add a try catch block in here. As usual, throw an error in catch block. This method will have a param name, to-do ID, which will get the MongoDB ID with the type of string. In try block, we will make response here same as in our last videos, but this time it will be axia.put and our endpoint will be the same as others /API/todos. In our endpoint, we will send two values to our API. One will be the ID, which will be to-do ID. The second value will be text, which will be new text for that to-do which we're going to update. I'll use the same state to-do which we used to add to-do for add operation. Basically, I'm going to reuse that state. I'll tell you how it's work as we move further. Now scroll down below. There is a add button. It is wrong as it need to be edit. Change it to edit. Now add on click listener here. In that listener, we make a state of true or false, which will show two things whenever we clicked on edit button. One, an input field which show that to-do value in it, and an update button. When we clicked on that button, it will update our to-do. Let's make a state above which we added below. Currently, this show edit state will be false. The value will change to true when we clicked on edit button. Now below edit button, I'll make condition here. Add curly brackets here, in that curly bracket. If show edit button value gets true, we will show two fields as I talked before. Let's copy the above input field which we used for add to do and its button along with its parent div and paste it in our condition. Let's change few things here. Change add text to update. Remove add to do method from here and make an anonymous method here and add our edit to do method here, which will get that to do ID. Remember that whenever we pass value to any method, you need make a method first. Then in that method we can add our method and pass values to it easily in JSX. The input field value stays same as added, no need to change anything here. Let's check the changes in the browser now. Let's click on edit button and check what we have here. As you can see, we have values in every input field now and we have button to update that value. Great. Let's change few things now, like when we clicked on edit button, it need to show that to do input field and button, only no need to show other fields. Get back to VS Code now. Let's make a one more state above, which will set the edit to do ID with the initial value in empty string. In our onClick listener for edit button, where we are showing the input and button when user click on it, wrap the set show edit state method in curly brackets and add set show edit to do ID here, which will set the to-do._ID here. What will happen here, whenever we clicked on edit button, it will do two things. Change both state values, add ID and set show to do ID, and add true and set show edit. Now below our condition, we after show edit, and an operator, check one more thing which if edit to do ID is triple equal to to-do._ID. What it will do is, whenever we clicked on edit button, it will check two things before showing the below JSX. One if the show edit is true or not, and other is if the edit to do ID is equal to selected to do ID. Let's check the changes in the browser now. Click on edit button. As you can see, it's working fine now. Although there is one issue we have, it's showing the edit button after clicked on it, which is not good. It need to hide that button whenever we clicked on it. Let's fix that. Get back to the project again. Wrap the whole edit button with curly brackets. Add the same condition here, but in reverse. Below, we are checking if it's matched. Here above, we will show edit button when it's not equal to that field. Let's check the changes again in the browser now. As you can see, it's working fine now. As you know in our last video, we have almost set the client-side functionality. Let's check further. Let's go above in our edit to do method. Comment the response section for now. Let's check what we are getting on console when we clicked on update button. I'll check ID and text too. Let's check the changes in the browser now. Right-click in the browser and press on Inspect. Click on Console. Let's click on one of to-do's edit button. I'll change text sleeping to sleeping again. Click on Update button. Great, we are getting the ID of that to-do and updated text for that to-do too. Let's check another to-do so we can verify the ID need to be different. As you can see, it's different from above ID. Let's get back to our project again now. Uncomment the response section again. Return response below. Above response, I'll set show edit false, as when we clicked on update button, it need to hide the input field in button and show edit button to us. Also, I'll recall the fetch to do's method to get the updated data from database every time when data update. Set the to-do value to empty string 2. Save the changes. Click index.ts file, which holds our APIs. Scroll down a bit, and below get handler object, I'll create a new handler here. This handler will be asynchronous, and as it's a put method we are calling from client side, it will be put method. Add try catch here and return an error in response here. And try block the response will be null, as we are not returning anything to client side. The status will be OK, 200 here. As we are getting 2 values from client side, we will get 2 values from request.json. I'll add a wait here. We will use our to-dos collection. Here we will use update1 method. The update1 method will get 2 objects. One, the mongodb ID. To compare mongodb in Fresh.Js framework, we use object ID instance, get by Mongo utility. Don't forget the new keyword. The other object will set and update the values. Always remember the key need to be same which you are going to update added in MongoDB. Save the changes now. Let's update a to-do in the browser. Click on Edit of any to-do. Let's say I want to update the study to-do. Click on it. Change study to studying. Click on Update button now. As you can see, it's updated here now. Also, the input field got closed too. As you know, in the last video we talked about how to do edit and update operation in our Fresh.Js framework using MongoDB. Today we will talk about our last CRUD operation, which will be delete operation. Let's get started now. Scroll down a bit in our project and find the remove button there. On button click, I'll add a listener here. This listener will have an anonymous method. In that method I'll add remove to do method, which we will create in a while, don't worry. We will pass to do ID to that method as param here. Let's create that method above. This method will be asynchronous method, and in param the to do ID will be type of a string. Add a try catch block here, throw an error in catch block. In try, I'll make a response same as usual as we make in our other APIs. We will use axia.delete method here. The endpoint will be same here. As an object, we will pass ID our delete method here from client side. In next line, we will check status here. If it's 200, we will do one thing here. We will call fetch to do's method here. Save the changes now. Clicked on index.ts file where all of our APIs are. Below put handler object, we create another handler here with the name of delete. This method will be same as others, asynchronous, and will have try catch block, and we will throw error in our response too. And try block the response will be null as we are not sending anything to client side. The status will be OK, also known as 200 here. We will get ID from request.json method. Now we will use that ID to delete the match to do from our MongoDB database. I'll use a wait here and use our to-dos collection. In there I'll use delete1 method here. As we will delete one to do at a time, we can use delete many if we are getting more than one IDs to delete more than one data from database. Let's delete a to-do in the browser now and see if we are getting any issue there. Click on Remove button. As you can see, that to-do is removed now. You can delete all of them if you want. You can add to-do and delete to-dos now easily. Great guys, we have performed all CRUD operations now. We know how to insert data, read data, update data, and delete data from our DB. In next video, we will improve our to-do app further. As in our last few videos, we know how to do CRUD operations with MongoDB in our Fresh.Js project. Today, we will improve our to-do app UI. Let's get started. Let's add few to-dos in our UI first. Click on Edit button first. As you can see, we don't have a close button to close the Edit button if it's open. Kind of looks uncool to me. Also, we will change these text update, edit, and add buttons and icons too. Open a new tab first in your Chrome browser. Write Bootstrap icons in the search and press Enter. Now click on first link you see. Here we can use icons in our project. For Edit button, let's change it to pencil icon. Type pencil in search and copy the icon's SVG below. Get back to VS Code. Let's create a new file first. In our component folder, right-click on it and click on New File. I'll name that file svgs.tsx. In this file, we will export our icons there. Let's export our first icon here. Type export and make a function here. I'll name the function edit icon. In return statement, I'll paste that SVG which I copied from Bootstrap site. Fix the indentation here. Get back to Bootstrap website again. Now we need add icon. Let's find a tick icon in there. Type check in the search. Scroll down a bit. I'll take check LG icon. Click on it. Copy the SVG below. Get back to VS Code again, and I'll make an export function here with the name of check icon below of edit icon method. In return, I'll paste the SVG here. Fix the indentation by typing Shift plus Alt plus F if you are using Windows. Get back to browser again, type cancel in the search. I'll pick this one. Click on it, copy the SVG code below. Get back to VS Code again and make an export function here. I'll name the method cross icon. In return, paste the SVG in it and fix the indentation too. We need one more icon defined, which will be remove icon like trash icon. Get back to Bootstrap site and search trash in the search field. I'll pick the filled one, click on it. Copy the SVG code below. Get back to VS Code again, make an export function here. This function will be named as trash icon and in return paste the code. Fix the indentation again. Save the file. Click on todos.tsx file. Remove the edit text and import the edit icon here as a component. Down below, remove the update icon and add a check icon here as a component. The icon is auto-importing as I have extension for it. On top, for add to do button, remove add text, add check icon here too as a component. Now below on edit to do button where we add check icon, copy the whole button and paste it below. Remove edit to do method from second button and add set show edit as false here. This will be used to close the edit field. As I talked in the start of the video, we don't have anything to close the edit field. Change check icon to cross icon. Alright, now change remove text to trash icon as a component too. Let's check the changes in the browser, how it's looking until now so far. Great, it's looking fine. Let's click on edit icon, looks cool. Click on cross icon to test it's working or not. Great, it's working now. Looks like we have an issue here. When we click or cross it's hide that to do edit icon too. Let's fix that issue. Get back to VS Code now. In set show edit, which we add recently, we need to add one more state here to change the state value. Wrap that state with curly brackets. Add set edit to do ID as an empty string here. This will fix our issue as it's going as null or undefined without it. Before checking the changes, let's improve some styling of our added icons and show colors accordingly. If you want to learn more about Tailwind CSS, I'll make a separate course for it if you want. Do comment me out about it. Let's check the changes in the browser again. Great, it's looking more cool than before. Clicked on edit icon again. And if I clicked on updated icon without changing anything, if update data empty, look like we have one more bug in our app. Remember, when we make anything, you need to test out everything so we can find bugs and fix it. To fix this bug, let's get back to VS Code again. Scroll above a bit. In our edit to do method, we are sending to do ID. Let's send whole to do object, not only to do ID. Clicked on edit to do method with control. Remove .id from here. Get back to edit to do method again. Change the params to do data and the type any for now. Change the to do ._id to do data._id. In next line, change text key value by based on condition. If the to-do which getting the data from input field is came as empty string like it did when we update the to-do without changing anything from client side. What I want is to save the existing data of that to-do by adding to-do data.to-do, which is our existing data, else if user do update the value then we will send the updated value by adding to-do here. Save the changes now, and let's check the changes again in the browser now. If I clicked on edit and as it's empty string right now, I'll add walking and update the value. As it's updated now, let's click on edit again, and this time I will not change anything and clicked on tick icon again. It's working now. As you can see, the value stays same now. That's it for now. We have almost completed our to-do app series. The next video will be our final video so far for our to-do series. Today is the last video of our to-do series so far. In this video, we will go further and advance feature of our to-do app. We will add status functionality in our to-do app, so if a task is completed, the user can click on complete icon, and that to-do will be show as complete. Alright, let's get started. As I'm in the same project, in todos.tsx file, go to add to-do method. In this method, in response where we are sending our to-do text through our endpoint to server side, let's add one more value, which is status:0. So whenever user create a to-do, status value will go as 1 with it. Now scroll down a bit. In JSX, where we are mapping our to-dos to UI, find the remove button where we are showing trash icon. Copy the whole button. Paste the copied button below now. And in our second button, we will change few things. First, change the remove method to is completed, which we will create soon. Don't worry about it for now. This method will also get the to-do ID value as a params too, as we will change the status according to selected to-do ID. As it will be completed button, so we will change trash icon to check icon, which will show the tick icon here. Let's create a is completed function above. This function will be asynchronous, with params as a to-do ID in it. We will add try catch here. In catch, we will return or throw error here as usual we do. In try block, let's make a response here. This API will be patch method from Axiod. The endpoint of that API will be same. In this method, we will send ID, which we are getting as a params. I'm using key as an ID here. Below that, we will check the response if it's 200. We will call fetch to do method here with a wait keyword. Great, let's change few UI things now. Scroll down a bit. There we are mapping our to-do UI. Wrap that class which contain the CSS with curly brackets. Change the string to tilde sign. You can find that sign mostly on your left, top side of the keyboard, below the escape button in Windows. With these changes, we can dynamically change our CSS however we want. Currently, the to-do show as background color gray 50. Let's cut that color for now. Add $sign here with curly brackets. By using these two things, we can use JS variables to change or add condition here. Let's check status here. If to-do.status is equal to 0, we will show the current color, which is gray 50. If not, we will show green color as a background here. Alright, let's create an API here. Go to index.tsx file. Below our delete API. Let's create our handler here. This will be an asynchronous handler, and the other things will stay same here. The things which will be changed here, this handler will be a patch handler. Let's add a try catch block here, return response here. In try block, the response will be null as we are not sending anything to the client side. The status will be 200 here. Let's get the ID which we are sending from client side from request.json method. Below that, we will use out to do collection, and in dot we will use update one method here, which used to update one value in the DB. The update one method will get two objects. One, check the ID from mongodb and compare with our ID which coming from client side. Second, we will use set method which update the key value with our value. As we are updating the status here, The key will be status and we will change value as 1 for now. Let's check the changes in the browser now. Let's add some to-dos here. Click on one of the to-do. Great, it's working fine now. It's changing the color when we clicked on it. There is one issue: the color of complete button is red. Let's change that to something else. Get back to VS Code again. We'll scroll down a bit. Here in our completed button, let's change red color to lime color. Save the changes. Let's check the changes in the browser now. Great, it's looking perfect now. We are finally conclude our to-do series. There are a couple of improvements you can do it. Explore it by yourself and comment me or what you can change in current to-do app by functionality. If you know how the logic behind the scenes work, the UI will not be an issue to you guys. In next series, we will work on e-commerce project. You guys will know how to make an e-commerce site using Fresh.Js project. That's it for now. If you like my series and videos, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video now. Happy coding!